Welcome to the Stormlands! We've got fun and games. In the first episode of this video series, the introduction, what I did was merely outline some of the campaign rules and house rules that will help shape and define said campaign. What I intentionally left vague was the campaign setting, which, dear viewers, in this video I will expand upon. But before we get into that, I think a little bit of a history lesson is in order. So, for the past 9 or so years, on and off, I've been developing and playing in a homebrew RPG system and associated campaign setting that I have given the working title of Empire of Death. As you may well imagine, inferring from the grimdark nature of its name, it is indeed a horror-themed low fantasy campaign setting. Now, as much as I am intrigued by the Mystara setting, Mystara being, to my understanding, the default setting for the BECMI edition of D&D, much as Greyhawk was for 1st edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. I'm not familiar with the tropes, with the lore, with all the conventions and the rest of it, and so I've decided not to play in that for my solo campaign. Rather, I'll just port over all the lore and all the other good stuff from my homebrew setting. Now, as I mentioned in the very first video, I've been itching to play the Rule Cyclopedia version of D&D for quite some time now, hence why I will not be using my very own rule system. They're quite different as well. They use dice, yes, but also tarot cards for character creation and in-game play. Doesn't use a level system, doesn't use a hit point system. It's a far cry from D&D and all of its associated OSR clones. If I get enough interest, I might actually make a proposal to get it published, show you guys what it's all about, explain the ins and outs, nuts and bolts. But for now, let's just stick to the campaign at hand, set in the BECMI edition of Dungeons & Dragons. And so without boring you with all the details and history, I'm actually going to wind the clock back a little bit, or quite a bit in fact, 400 years from the point that I was playing with my table, and it'll be less of a low fantasy setting. I wouldn't go as far as saying a mythic time in the campaign world, but one where there's more magical elements prevalent throughout the world. But enough about that, let's get into the details of the actual area we'll be fighting, exploring and dying in. The Stormlands. From time immemorial, far to the west of the Iron Empire, there roiled a stretch of water, eternally racked by violent squalls, thunder, lightning, and angry black clouds that weep ceaselessly with tears of rage. It was known to one and all as the Sea of Storms, and has been given a wide berth, as any ship that entered it was never seen again. A little over 3 years ago, this all changed, as the storm suddenly stopped. Now, a seemingly placid mill pond. Word quickly spread as mariners' rumours reached the ears of kings and queens. Moreover, those first few brave souls who dared to cross the sea came back with tales of a strange new world ready to be explored. Upon hearing of this land beyond the Sea of Storms, the Iron Emperor Pharazonus IV wasted no time and appointed one of his most trusted henchmen, Lord Blackstone, to head the fleet bound for its shores to claim the lands in the name of the Empire. After a month-long journey across the calmed sea, Blackstone and his entourage finally make landfall on the southern shore of the Storm Coast. There, they quickly set up an ad hoc port for future berthings of imperial vessels, and named it St. Brennus in honor of the patron saint of mariners and fishermen. A few miles to the northwest, Blackstone and his men-at-arms discovered the first signs of civilization, or what's left of it. A ruined castle, now the nesting grounds for dozens of flying monsters. Part hag, part avian, all trouble. Harpies. Needless to say, there was an intense battle where many lost their minds to the harpy screeches, or their lives to their jagged talons. Blackstone and his men prevailed, however, and won the day, and once completely cleared of the harpy threat, named the ruins in his own honor, of course. He decided that once repaired and refurbished, Castle Blackstone would make for a fine base of operations from which to mount future exploratory expeditions. Anyway, fast forward 3 years, and as you can see, areas close to the castle have been scouted somewhat, and even named. And the farmers have wasted no time planting crops to help transition the camp to a more permanent arrangement. That is to say, rely less on shipments from the mainland. A nearby tower has been claimed, and acts as a lookout and lighthouse. Storm Watchtower. There are also 2 dungeons that have been discovered. One, the Pit, is a deadly location that none have returned from. And the other, the lair of a great giant ant swarm, hasn't even been entered due to the ferocity of its denizens. More about these when we get to actually playing. I'll not go into detail on absolutely everything here, but one other thing I'd like to quickly mention is the Bandit Hills. All kinds of folk, both foul and fair, have arrived over the past 3 years to make their fortunes. But Lord Blackstone, being a lawful and strict sort, abides no thievery, drunkenness, or lewd behaviour in his newly established domain. Thus, many of these unrepentant sinners have consequently been cast out of the community to become, well, what else? Outlaws. Now each hex here represents 6 miles, and the lands within a hex or so of the castle and along the trails leading to both the port and the pit are patrolled by lancers of 20 medium cavalry, and so are relatively safe from the depredations of the bandits and most other nasties lurking in the hills and woods. There are other important NPCs located in and around the castle, but we'll get to them when the time is right. I've also generated rumours and quests, but I'll get into those later on as well. So now that 3 years have passed, we have a base of operations, albeit with minimal support for the party. Speaking of which, mostly will be arriving fresh off the boat, chomping at the bit to make their fortunes and elevate their names among the bravest and most successful heroes of the Empire. Or, more likely, end up as owlbear poo, fertilizing a forgotten corner of a nameless forest somewhere. We'll see. In the previous video, I did mention that I will be trying to play this in the most old school way possible. In other words, pencil, paper, dice. As few trappings of the digital kind and electronics in general as possible. I did also mention a couple of caveats. The first one being that all of the solo supplements are in PDF form. So in other words, digital. That's fine. I might make some tables, print them off, even write them up, who knows. Secondly, there's one resource I just could not bypass. Something I've had and used in my own campaign for my own system for many years, and that is Hexographer. Now what you see here before you is only a small portion of the rest of the world that's been generated. And so using Hexographer's generator, I produce what you see here and, as I said, much more. So yeah, other than that, I won't be using digital dice or anything else of that sort. Some dice rolls might be off camera if they're boring. However, if enough of you demand to see every single dice roll, I might change my mind. We'll see. And that about covers it. I could go on, and I tend to. I'm trying to keep these videos short as possible. So what I've done here is provide you with a brief overview of the Stormlands, what's involved, a few potential exploration sites. But beyond that, more will be revealed in the fullness of time. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to the patrons of the channel, and I hope you enjoy the adventures to come. Farewell.
Chin ass!